Let everybody know. Done. We may start. Good of everybody to join us this evening. We've got a few on, and we certainly got some incredible whiskies to try tonight. But it's not only tonight just about the whiskey. It's certainly about the guests that we've got on tonight, because I was driving here in the car this evening and I was thinking to myself, the experience that these two guys have got is incredible. You know, it's actually, and I think when you've got this amount of experience in any tasting in a room or on a Zoom tasting, you just you get a little bit you get butterflies in your stomach, because you kind of go, there's a lot that can be said here. There's a lot of really good questions we can ask. And so what I hope everybody does tonight is uses the chat, get some questions in there. There will be a bit of time at the end. Stewart is only with us till about 8:30. He's got another appointment, but yeah, just plenty of time on the whiskies, and we're going to try to go through them all and talk a little bit about BenRiach, and also obviously the whiskies and the new core range that BenRiach has recently produced. I'm not going to say much. We want to spend all the time. I'm going to hand you over first of all to Linus. Linus is a brand ambassador here in Australia, and he has, like I said, so much experience in whiskey in general in the industry, but also with BenRiach. I think he's just told me he's got 5 years with BenRiach now. And then Linus will introduce Stewart Buchanan, who is the brand ambassador for BenRiach. And we'll talk a bit to Stewart as well. And hope you all enjoy this evening. Linus, take it away.
Fella. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having us. Craig, really appreciate it. Thanks to Toon de Gear, aka Stewart Buchanan, who's got up really early to drink whiskey for breakfast. Thank you, mate. I truly appreciate it. I think my 5 years with BenRiach is pales in difference to Stewart Buchanan. He's been there for what, 20 years? More than 20 years at BenRiach. Was it?
Yeah, 2004, not quite 20. It's almost coming up.
So 17 years, and I'm really looking forward to his tasting. I always learn something new when we have a chat with Stewart Buchanan. I think he's one of the best going around. This is going to be a really exciting tasting because, as Craig said, we've got like the brand new SKUs. We've evolved the BenRiach to this new packaging, slightly rigid formulation that's unlocked some really subtle, interesting flavors. And we've got a few crackers from the past as well. So I love a dichotomy of like the new exciting liquid and that quirky old liquid as well. But probably going to ask Stewart the question first. Hey, mate. Just a bit of chat about a quick overview about BenRiach, what it is, where it is, what sort of whiskey you make. Good morning, mate. How you going?
Perfect. Yes. Sorry, guys, if you're seeing me as Toon de Geer, it's not Toon de Geer from the Netherlands. It's Stewart Buchanan. So let's just clear that up at the start. A technical hitch from a prior Zoom tasting. But yes, it's great to be on with you guys again. And although it's 8 o'clock in the morning, never too early to have a wee dram with you guys. But it has been exciting. It's actually over a year now since we launched this first new range of BenRiach. So it was a year past in September, finally now getting out to you guys. And honestly, the response across the world has been phenomenal, far exceeded all our expectations even, and actually more importantly, you know, when Rachel brings these whiskies together, the forecasts have been almost double to what we thought initially under this kind of unusual circumstance. So it is fantastic to do this whole new range of BenRiach. But what I say, we talk about a new range, but in some ways I just see it as a further evolution of BenRiach. Because when I started in 2004, you know, walking in the door, you know, opening the warehouse, 2004, we had, let's say, about 30,000 casks, generally mostly ex-refill sherry casks. We had some bourbon barrels, second fill bourbon barrels, some hogsheads. So that was the foundation that we acquired back in 2004. But ever since then, you know, the work we've done in cask maturation, secondary cask maturation, bringing back in the triple distillation, bringing back in the peated spirit, even doing our own floor malted barley expressions. The distillery's always evolved. And if you look at the timeline since 2004, that first range we had, almost every 3 years, you see different cask combinations coming into play. So when Rachel Barry takes over the warehouses, she opens that warehouse 13 And she's like a child in a sweet shop. She really is. You've been in there, Linus. You've seen it. You've been in there. The ingredients she has to work with is phenomenal. Call it that. That's our larder. She's got the biggest larder in Scotland to work with. So how she can imagine that? How could she bring her own personal touches in that? Almost looking at that combination of cask and reimagining BenRiach, but it is also everything laid down from the past. So it's an evolution of how every distillery grows. No distillery can grow its range unless its warehouses evolve. And that's where we are 17, 18 years later. So that's a wee nutshell there. We can talk about more things as we go on. But even the creative, you've seen that. If we look at the 10-year-old, for example, this 10-year-old bottle we have here, again, I love this new packaging. It's clear, it's simple, it's concise, tells the story of all the casks. It really, for me, captures BenRiach's character. But if you do look at this, 10-year-old original, even then we went right back to the first BenRiach 10-year-old that came out of the distillery as a distillery-owned bottling back in the 1990s, which was, oops, that's the wrong one. Where am I looking? This one. So this bottle here. So that's an old Seagram's 1994 or 1996, I think it was. But that was the first 10-year-old to come out of the distillery. And we took that duck egg blue, we took the bold font back, we took that red highlight. So I do love even how this new 10 or the new packaging is touching on that history and heritage, just bringing that old label into the modern shelf space. So I like it when you can always touch to the past and anything, whether it's flavour, palette or design.
100%. Thank you, man. Yeah, you're right. It's really exciting times. It's such great juice, and I love that nod to the past, as you were saying. Probably maybe have a really quick chat just about the process and how we actually make BenRiach. What's apart from other distilleries, obviously from our stills to our fermentation process to our eclectic barrel aging process as well. I'm
going to give you the most rapid.
Here we go.
Nice. Run through the warehouse. And actually, BenRiach itself, you remember, it's all on one level. For me as a distiller, back in my days, walking into BenRiach, it was almost Whisky 101 because it started with the barley coming in the malt intake, and then only 55 meters later coming out in spirit and getting into the warehouse, 2 meters over the road into the warehouse 13. So it's this beautiful flow. I'm sure you've all seen line diagrams of whiskey production. That's the way I explain BenRiach. It's extremely simple from the barley coming out to the milling, to the mashing, fermentation, distillation. It's all in this lovely, let's call it a T shape with in its map. But everything drives towards this orchard fruit character. And you come to Scotland, you walk through a warehouse, you walk into production, you open the doors of production. What you smell in that atmosphere in the distillery should be what you should get in the glass. It should connect, it should be the DNA of the distillery. And you walk in, even to the mashing room, the first thing you get is this wave of sweet, sweet malt. You walk into the fermentation room, you get this green apple, fresh green apple skin. Then you go through to the still house and you get almost taking that apple and condensing it and ripening it and caramelizing it into this massive orchard fruit. So you can walk through the BenRiach distillery and really see the elevation of all these characters coming along in each part of the process. That's what I love about BenRiach. It really drives towards that classic Speyside style. So you could say things like, what happens? Why is that? One of the hardest high mineral waters in the Speyside. So the hard minerality, great base to, again, through fermentation, start delivering these high esters in the beer. But even before that, we use a four water mashing system, relatively lower temperatures compared to a 3-water system, which is when you infuse the barley with the water to make the big porridge, which will extract the wort from. So even at that point, we're being more gentle in the barley, producing a very clear wort and also a very sweet forward maltiness, which for me is always the first thing I capture as I walk into the distillery. So even there, always driving. You take your beer, after your wort, your wash, we're leaving it longer fermentation, anywhere between, let's call it 85 and 110 hours in that ballpark. That's going to taste like a Guza crisp lambic beer almost. It's got green apple skins already in it. It's got this fresh zestiness, which is just so fresh and crisp. And the stills we have, beautiful pear-shaped stills. no massive boiling bowls or rounded shoulders, are very slender. They run extremely slowly. And I think in the distillation, one thing that captures my imagination all the time is even just looking at the spirit safe. Very slow running stills, both the wash still and the spirit still just running at a very steady flow, very good contact with that copper. And if you do remember the spirit safe and the spirit side, you can almost see this almost totally covered in green verdigris. And when you see that green verdigris, which is the copper oxide, you know then you've got this beautiful conversation with the rising spirit and then that copper, obviously, of the still. So again, taking away all these, sulfates and compounds we don't want, and actually ripening that fruit again. One last thing which I love in the new make spirit is actually having a very big window of opportunity to get the middle cut. So by lengthening your middle cut, going on early after 13 minutes, we're going to get all the big fruits, and leaving it on later than most, we got all the sweet barley. So even the middle cut is representing what we're doing through the whole process, trying to keep intact the big fruit nature and that big barley character. Now, hope that made sense. That was a whistle stop tour. Make spirit here. If I could scoosh you with this, you would get that. On your hands with a new make spirit, first smell, apples, pears, even pineapple in there. Beautiful esters, high ester tones. As soon as that alcohol dissipates, you go back again. What are you going to there? Back to the barley. So that new make spirit is perfect. It's already got a sweetness. It's already got that caramelization. It's already got vanillas and toffees in it, as well as that orchard fruits. Put that to cask. It's a winner. So whistle stop tour through production.
I'm now really thirsty. So just obviously for our line today, just the order we're going to be tasting the whiskies. We're going to the BenRiach 10, the BenRiach Smoky 10, the BenRiach 12, and then we'll go over to the quarter cask, then to the quarter cask peated, that little cheeky whiskey that we might try to very a little bit of a surprise and delight. So Stuart, you've got me thirsty. You really have. And unfortunately, it's 7:18 here in Melbourne, Australia, so it's okay to drink. Shall we just dig into the first whiskey, the BenRiach 10?
Let's do it. Let's do it. And you guys as well. I see, what's that, Mark? You're putting that to your nose there. Mark, I bet you, even like myself, when I pop this cork, it is ripe apples and pears, isn't it? Yellow apple, yellow ripe pears, honey drizzled through that. A classic BenRiach, classic Speyside. I don't even have to put it too close to my nose, and it's so elevated, that beautiful sweet fruit note. So there we go. BenRiach 10-year-old, original 10. Oh, what is it here? 20 past 8 in the morning. Not a bad dram for this time of day.
Breakfast whiskey.
And yeah, crisp, beautiful gold colour. BenRiach always holds that beautiful gold colour because normally the foundation is usually an American oak. So that's going to deliver that lovely bright gold character we're looking for. And also, if you think about what I mentioned about the new make spirit, the apples, the pears, the honey, you look at what American oak's going to deliver, the vanillas, the cinnamons, the toffees, the butterscotch, they're a match made in heaven. Already that's apple pie in a glass, even if you look at American oak and the spirit character.
Sorry, just a quick question for Mark, just asking if this is all natural colour.
Yes, all natural colour, all natural. And you look at the viscosity, you look at the colour, this is nothing, you couldn't actually, you'd be hard pushed to get something as bright and as gold as that by using E150. E150 would normally show a kind of crimson hue.
Yeah, beautiful and bright.
Yeah. So also we want to build the layers, and looking back at what we've done in the past, yes, that foundation is American oak, ex-bourbon barrel. But then when you taste it, what you're going to get is this beautiful spiced toasted oak note up through the middle. So you will get these waves of the orchard fruits at the front. And then slowly, bum, 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 feel that in your tongue, that vibrancy, that sensation. That's created not by the spirit, that's created by the virgin oak casks we're using in here as well. So if Rachel's laying down that base of bourbon barrels to build that sweetness and perfect combination with the character, we're building that middle elevation with the toasted oak of the virgin oak, which is bespoke toasted to us, medium char, medium toast, which we find is the perfect conditioning of that wood to unlock the spices we're looking for and that additional toasted oak character. So you can see already we're building the layers through here.
Antelope, nice and great. Ooh.
But are we finished yet on the casks? Nope, we're not. We want another dimension. What do we want to always keep in BenRiach? That fruit. Always look, as you go through all of these, look for the fruit, look for the oak spice, and look for the malt. They should come in that way, blah, 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 as well as everything else that's beautiful within it. But that's the three things we want to try and elevate. The interesting thing here, that which elevates the barley at the back of the palate, is the sherry element, which is quite unusual when you think about sherry. You normally think of darker fruits, stone fruits, dried raisins, dates, plums, prunes, all these things. But when you use the sherry in this case, what you're using is the sherry cask to almost emphasize that barley at the back. Now, we do say sherry on the label. Now, which sherry is it? Maybe even put in the comments, guys. We use Oloroso or we use PX. Which sherry do you think we're using in here predominantly? If anybody's got an idea, put it in there, but I will tell you in a second. But it does make sense when I do tell you. So if I look at that sherry element, we don't want the dark fruits. We don't want the big prunes. Whiskey, marl, yeah, there you go. Oloroso, first one up is correct. Because as a sherry, is not going to give you the dark fruits and the dates unless you leave it longer and longer and longer. The Oloroso sherry is going to keep that liveliness, keep that nuttiness, the earthiness, and actually expose that barley at the back. So that's exactly, maybe Rachel will bring a little bit of PX in here if she needs a bit of balance, or maybe bring a bit of sweetness, but the predominant sherry will be Oloroso to give us that next wave of layers coming in the back of the palate. Beautiful.
I love how the bottle's just so clear and simple. It tells you that the three, cask maturation process. It's nice and clear, simple. There's no secrets.
It is. And we are being a bit sneaky here as well. Rachel's not finished yet. We're going to wave another thing in here, which just keeps it BenRiach. BenRiach's been producing peated malt in production for almost 50 years now. So just to let you know, this has BenRiach out of the other 50 or so distilleries in Speyside. Rachel, again, if you look at the label of this, describes the smoke level as a trace. So she's woven in a little bit of the peated spirit, describing it as a trace of smoke. You might not find that. I don't half the time. Sometimes I do. If you add water, it'll maybe pull more forward. If I leave it to sit, it'll come maybe more eventually. But the peat influence is here very subtle. And in fact, another thing that the peat will do is add more honey into the combination. It'll elevate the honey notes and also accentuate some of that sweet barley at the back, which I can just tell you why that happens later. But again, beautiful, balanced combination of casks. No one thing screams and shouts. It's just beautifully balanced of each.
Like a struck match note. Okay, I like it. I like it a lot. I like how obviously like the old 10 was really bright and vibrant, but there's just some more subtle flavors coming through. It's a bit more complex and still.
Yeah, I think what I would say, if I look at the past compared to now, the fruits have just ripened. So that I think Rachel's unlocked more honey than we've ever had before. We never had a honey note running through it before. It was always more in the citrusy, green apple skin, let's say, in the old 10s. And it is that little bit of peated spirit that's actually unlocked more of that honey due to the middle cup being slightly lower, slightly more barley sweetness in the focus on the peated whiskey. So it does unlock honey in the other expression, which is one of these funny things just about how you blend whiskey together.
Amazing. And there's some great tasting notes in the chat room as well. Love your thoughts, guys. Love your ideas. Please keep them coming. Yeah, fantastic. I always love hearing people's ideas and thoughts. You get any flavour notes, it's there. It's an intensely personal experience trying whiskey. I love hearing anyone's thoughts and ideas. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Amazing. So the new 10, done, dusted, fascinating, complex, very, very drinkable. I reckon we move on to the BenRiach 10 smoky.
Yeah, so that's us. That 10 is encapsulating everything about the distillery. So remember that 10 in your head is let's say the DNA that's running through the veins of the distillery and will be the base of everything that's happening further on. But then how can we ladder that up? How can we layer that up? How can we bring more cask combinations that we've laid down over the last 17 years together we can then go to, just another level with this. So we're going to do the 10 smoky or the 12?
I reckon up to you. I reckon the 10 smoky. I reckon.
That's perfect. I like doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So 10 smoky, I can happily put this in the middle of a tasting. People used to look at me quite odd, thinking, do you know what, I keep all the peated whiskey to the end. But with this one, I said, no, we can actually put this right in the middle, the start, because the smoke level in here and that Highland peat isn't going to blow your palate away. You can still just happily refresh your palate, and it's not going to deter anything from the further drams. But also remember, the Highland peat is different. You know, this is the Highland peat here. Hopefully you can see it if you guys can see me here, but you see far more root structure, more kind of organic texture still in play here, far less decomposition of that organic matter. It's really fibrous, really fibrous. So that is basically laid down tree or let's say forestation vegetation from 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. So it's not like the Isle of Peat where you're talking about mosses or seaweed or low-lying shrubs. This is big wood structure here that's under the land that we're tapping into. So when you do burn that, you get wood smoke. It's almost like apple wood when you burn it. It's not got any iodine whatsoever. It's not got any of that medicinal note or salinity. It's pure wood smoke. And that again is perfect for this expression and the cask within it. So smoky 10. On the nose, I think a strange thing happens. Again, I always think the Highland peat is that the nose always maybe is a little bit more distant than the palate. So when you nose this, and we're describing this as rich this time, you might think, oh, yes, there's smoke there, but I wouldn't say it was a rich smoke. So the nose is always more distant to you with that smoke than the palate is, which I think brings great fun when you do taste it. This smoke kind of creeps up and kind of catches you by surprise sometimes. So even out with all the fruit characters, just look how that smoke develops. It is applewood, it really is, because again, you've got this applewood, perfect smoked applewood. That's all I can say.
I've got a smoking gun. I used some cocktails, and yeah, applewood, 100%.
But you taste it. It takes about it's coming 4 seconds. It doesn't come in right at the start. It comes in 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, 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 and then it just coats your mouth with that beautiful smoke again. So instantly that campfire's got closer to you. You know, it's in your garden now. You've got that smoker right in front of you. Beautifully balanced. It doesn't overtake. It comes up, smothers your palate, but then mellows back again. So that journey of the smoke here is absolutely perfectly integrated into the character of this. And Rachel doesn't just use peated spirit here. She will combine classic and peated to make that happen. She will dictate to the whiskey, I want it to come in here, be this level, this length, this softness as it goes through. So she's playing with the two styles to actually dictate what happens and where and when that peat comes through. But even casks are beautifully integrated here as well.
Well, I love the third cask that we're using for this. I think it's an absolute cracker.
Yep. So again, that beautiful bright gold colour, and again, even more viscosity there, a real syrupy. BenRiach's never oily. It's always more just syrupy than oily as such. But again, that colour's telling us, and even the nose will tell us, we're going back to that foundation of American oak, you know, the beautiful American oak characters. We still are using the virgin oak to gain that spice in the middle, the toasted oak characters. So similar to the 10 in its first 2 casks. But then the beautiful little tweak here, if anybody remembers some of our old expressions, where we had a whiskey called the Aromaticus Formosus, which was the peated rum cask, Aromaticus. We had a bit of a joke back then in these names. But we're using some of these casks and bringing that into play to again elevate that fruit. So you'll see even the fruit change now. The fruit is riper even again. It's moving into more, even that pineapple note's coming back, overripe banana note in there. It's a very ester Jamaican rum we're using, which again works well with that high esters of the new spirit. So again, they're in sync. They're not out of balance, and it just elevates that fruit tone more. You might get more sweetness of the barley at the back, because the middle cut of the spirit, the peated spirit, is slightly lower, emphasizing that barley note. So you might find even additional sweetness from the spirit alone, never mind the added sweetness from the cask style.
Yeah, I love our own cask. I love that, like molasses, and you'll put that over banana as well. We're also getting some cracking tasting notes in this chapter. I'm going to quite blatantly steal from my tasting things, guys. I really appreciate your thoughts and ideas. But yeah, beautiful Highland peated whiskey, super tasty.
I don't know, Terence, that's actually, I've not had my breakfast yet, but slightly burnt muffin, Nutella and jam. That sounds like a good breakfast.
I love that campfire. Just like you fall asleep next to a campfire and you wake up and you smell your clothes, that sense of campfire.
It's a Moorish smoke as well. It's a smoke that you get intrigued and captures you. It's not like, oh, what's that? It's like, what's that? So it brings you right in. I don't always describe it as a Moorish smoke because generally, and again, more particularly even you guys, I think I grew up in camping and going out camping or having campfires on the beaches back in Tobermory and Mull. You know, I was brought up with this kind of going home with campfire smoke in my clothes. So when I get that campfire smoke, it takes me back to being a wee kid having a campfire on the beach.
You said before how the rum barrels are pretty dry when you get them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, they get shipped over. A lot of people think when you bring or you're doing casks, and it's something you got to be careful with. You know what's in that cask when you've before you fill it. I would advise MD never to fill on top of any liquid in a cask. Always turn it upside down overnight before you fill it. Make sure you've drained all that residual liquid in there, so you know it's all just the wood influence that's going to come through as it absorbs in. And actually think about how dry a cask is, or the wetness or the dryness of a cask. If you put your whiskey to a drier cask, it might take longer to achieve the result, but what you're going to get is your spirit soaking into that wood like a sponge, and it takes a little bit longer to release that back again. But due to their journey from Jamaica to Scotland, you know, in container, for example, being emptied in Jamaica, they do tend to be slightly drier, which I think is a good thing, because you don't only just get the flavour of the rum, you're driving your spirit into the wood to then bring the balance of spice back out again.
Exactly. Amazing. We've got a few to try, so I reckon we actually move on to the brand spanking new BenRiach 12.
Sure. And just to touch on that as well, the peated one, I don't know if people in the, you know, on the Zoom here are peated whiskey fans, but I'm sure if you're not a peated whiskey fan, you can see how we can really open up the peated whiskey world to people who maybe it's not their generally first choice. It is a more comfortable smoke level, and I have changed a lot of people's opinion on peated whiskey by the BenRiach peat style, just with its comfortable nature.
It's a good question about the peat before we move on to the 12. Back when we brought out the whiskey in '94, would that have been slightly peated as well? I get a trace of that.
Yeah, Rachel found that in the old 94 as well. Hence why she wove it into the current original 10, you know, almost not trying to replicate it, but touching on that heritage and history that's gone down before us. So you always want to be doing that. That's what whiskey is. Whiskey's not just opening a warehouse and saying, I want to make what I want to make. You've got to look at what's happened through the decades before you and bring that all together.
100%. Thank you, mate. Right. We have 12. Good times.
Perfect. Well, thanks for that comment, Craig. I think it is much clearer. If you remember back in the day, we probably had 35 expressions to talk about on one table, and all the levels were, it was so confusing. So I myself am glad that it's tidied up and makes my life easier a little bit. So I'm sure you can see that. A wee bit of water, your palate's back to scratch. That peat, again, it's not going to influence any drams further down the line.
Soft, elegant. You're right, very Moorish though.
It is.
Yeah. No more curiositas. Well, I did do Latin at high school for 2 years, so.
Well, I don't know which curiosities you guys had in the last, because curiosity had also evolved from just a urban virginal combination, some hogsheads back in the day. And one of the latter curiosities vatings did contain rum. So you had that, it was a more matte label. But what Rachel has done is almost used that same recipe, but elevated the rum and put her other touch on the combination and the ratios of the old recipe.
We did get it in, and I was wildly confused at first until I spoke to you. Yeah, you're right. That was like the precursor for the new one.
It seems like 12. We have a sherry with 12 out, and that two different guises, let's say, before. Original 12 that we had back in the day, it was only for Taiwan, but it then did start going into other markets. And the old 12 was basically a bourbon stroke sherry finish. So it was a combination of roughly 6 years bourbon moving into sherry for 6 years, and a combination almost 50-50 of Oloroso and PX. Beautiful whiskey. So what does Rachel do when she goes into the warehouse this time? She looks at the casks and says, well, yeah, that old 12 was fantastic, but how can I, again, the warehouses, how can I add another layer of character in here? And she does that with, again, a different cask combination. So we look at the 12, we're darker in colour here. So again, we're going to start moving into that more, let's say that kind of more golden bronze colour. You can see the depth getting a bit richer, still beautiful viscosity in the glass. But then when you nose it, you can think, yeah, there's still a sweetness and the fruits are still there, but you wouldn't say it's particularly, the foundation isn't bourbon this time. We're looking more into the sherry, the fortified wines here. So you can tell that depth on the nose that we're moving into that different cask. But still sweet, still smooth, still cream, it's more creamy actually. It doesn't have any virgin oak this time. So we're not looking for that virgin oak spice, toasted oak. We still do get a spice from the oak there, but it's not that virgin oak element we're looking for in the 10s. Any spice here is coming from the Spanish oak rather than any toasting levels of American oak. And I think this is, again, beautifully balanced. This is the only one in the whole range that does not contain any smoke. So if you look at the label, it'll say smoke level nil. So no smoke in this one whatsoever. But again, even the honey's changed, more rich maple notes. You get more, again, you can tell coming in there.
Yeah, with the jam as well.
Yeah, exactly. That fruit's changed. It's almost going to kind of forest fruits rather than that. We're moving out of the orchard into the forest, let's say, and again, using these fruits. So what we got in here? It says sherry. Which sherry? I did ask the question in the 10, which sherry? Again, correctly. Also, if I was to ask the question, which is the most dominant sherry here this time, I would definitely be putting it into the PX. Rachel will be also here as well, but I think the dominant sherry character she's using here is definitely that sweetness and richness of the Pedro Jimenez cask. It's almost bringing more chocolate, more orange. I love that orangey, kind of caramelized orange note in there as well, which is beautiful. Nice oak spice. Always very fresh and bright, like BenRiach is, and very playful. But on the palate, that oak spice is nice. I think maybe if you taste this, guys, I know it's early for me, my palate's still a bit fresh, but what I'm tasting is a difference in that spice between the toasted oak of the new virgin oak and the elements of the Spanish oak here. Because that Spanish oak spice this time is a little bit drier, a little bit dustier, more kind of dunnagey, oaky note in the middle of this dram. Which is beautiful. Again, more of that caramelized orange, but the fruit development here I get is almost moving into like cherries, like the maraschino cherry, that dark cherry notes, and that's cherry with a CH, not an SH, so cherries. And I think that comes from using the third cask this time, which is Porto. So some beautiful port casks in here. The port casks, exactly what they're doing, same as the rum. They're taking that orchard fruits of BenRiach, then moving it in another direction. So we are giving more of that. I think the cherry and the combination of the sherry is a beautiful partnership. But again, balanced. No one thing standing out.
We've got a buy here called a cherry rye, which is like dark chocolate and cherry, which reminds me.
I always think of Black Forest Gateau. You know, you get the dark chocolates, you got orange, cherries, you get that richness, that creaminess.
So it's praline as well on the palate, which, yeah.
But it has got a dryness, which I love. It's almost a vintage. When you get that lovely, comfortable, dry, earthy note. So you can tell that we have used some other also in here as well to maintain that lovely earthiness. It's just going to be comfortable in the dryness and a little bit of spice in the back. Almost that Dunnagey warehouse note that I talk about. So this for me is far beyond its years. For me, it seems far older than a 12-year-old due to that beautiful combination.
Happy days, happy days. Obviously, in about 3 months' time, we'll get the BenRiach Smoky 12 as well. About 3rd March.
I'll come back and do that one with you.
Yeah, so I like
that's
it.
Delightful. Like, you want to take your time with this one. This is one I want to take a little bit slower because there is such a beautiful spice note that I want to almost like prolong and elongate. So yeah, this is more my autumn garden evening dram. Yeah, want to sit down a bit longer with this one.
I actually like the old 12, I really did, but this one, you're right, just that little level of complexity. Now, just a question for you, Stuart, it's up to you. I actually forgot we were tasting BenRiach 21. Do you think we should get into that before we get into the quarter casks?
Yeah, we can do that if you like.
It's actually funny, like I didn't know we'd try and get it actually on my bar right in front of me because I actually did a tasting with it on Saturday and I forgot just how tasty it really was. So it's actually sitting on my bar very handily. I'm going to go
back, even before I pour this and open this one, I'm going to go back to Terence's tasting note of the jam and muffins. So think about your jam and muffin again, but without the Nutella, I think for the 21. For me, it's very much red berry jammy compote that we have in this.
It's actually whiskey that I drank on Saturday, and I thought, this is so smooth and soft and easy. But the more I drank it, the more I actually unlocked flavors, the more complex it got. So sorry, guys. Yeah, we are changing the order, but I think this is just a nice, light, soft whiskey. It's best to have it before we get into the quarter casks.
Yeah, at this age, it's still very playful, still very bright, very. You've always got that sweetness, and I always joke sometimes that BenRiach never gets old. But that, I mean, it never gets dull, it never flattens off. It always stays bright, playful, crisp in its nature. It's got this lovely vibrancy, which again just makes me smile when it comes to enjoying a dram.
Right, cool. I was getting some nectarines and tangerines on those as well, which is kind of cool. Again, someone saying like what did they say? They said sweet berry compote and panna cotta, red frogs on the nose. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah,
it's great notes tonight, guys. Thank you so much. It's fantastic.
But for me, it's that red berry compote. It's that sweetness of just this beautiful kind of macerated berries in there, and that comes from red wine. We are using red wine in this combination, which is elegantly done as well, because sometimes red wine can get too dry, too tannic. Sometimes the bitterness of red wine can sometimes, maybe diminish that fruit-forward nature. But I think by using, again, and you've got to remember, guys, we're not finishing these casks. It's not moving from one to the other. It is almost like the cask combinations are done in real time. So you're starting off with one cask, you're then adding another bit into the vat, then another one into the vat, another one into the vat. So it's very much that recipe, let's say, that Rachel's following or Billy before, rather than just it moving from then going to bottle. You can really control it in that way. But yeah, I love it. As I say, bright, fresh. It's got an earthiness to it still. Again, a lot of people ask us what red wine do we use, and we've got many red wines, so we can be versatile with which red wine house it comes from. But what you might get here is that different spice again. Remember, we're always talking about not only the fruits we're talking about how that spice is coming across. And one of the most important things about the red wine is that it's French oak, and you'll maybe taste that French oak difference. It's a bit more peppery. It's again drier. You can start getting a little bit tannin there, but not over tannic. It's just enough to offset the sweetness of the rest of the styles. Biscuits, yeah, biscuit. That biscuit. That for me is almost another expression how the barley comes across. Always think, what am I getting from the barley? Is that a sweet barley? Is that a biscuity barley? Is that a cereal? Is that granola? You can look at how that barley comes up, which should always be almost in the last third of the dram as you start going down from the spice and the fruit.
raisin kumquat figs, Christmas mint. Oh, right.
And if you do, depends, you can drink this in different ways. If you've still got a little bit, see if you move it down to the more delicate parts, I think you'll start to pull more of that dryness of the French oak. You get this, it's almost kind of coating your tongue with that comfortable dryness, but really it's on the edge when you put it to that delicate part. So again, it's for me, how do I want to drink this? Do I want the fruit notes and just have that nice and easy, which I'll drink it over my tongue? Or do I want to put more spice in there, put another different level of depth of that spice by moving it into the more delicate part? So you can play around with that.
So this is 4 casks into the 21.
Yeah. Again, American oak, the rum, and then again we are using the sherry as well. We could, the rum, the red wine,
Port as well.
This is actually now elevated to the 21 we've got today, which still contains rum, but red wine. But what Rachel's doing with the new 21 is actually adding another layer of that smoke within this. So the new 21 is still using the same cask combination, but then almost layering in the smoke, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, I got to try it the other day. It's an absolute cracker. Absolute cracker.
The new 21 actually reminds me of a whiskey of the past, which was our old 21-year-old Authenticus, which is one of the first kind of premium old peated whiskies we launched in 2004. For me, it's got that same elegance of that smoke. So it's funny how, even though it wasn't by design by Rachel, it's funny how I can see that relationship to the old 21s of the past.
Yeah, this is very Moorish. Like I said, on Saturday I did a tasting, and then I got home and I gave it a little bit of a nudge. Super tasty, elegant. But
do you know what I think it was good as well? See, by doing that, because that French oak been a bit drier, and I don't know if you guys have got the same thing, but I've got this kind of dryness in my palate just now. But see, when you go to the next one, because the quarter cask there, I think by drinking that will make the quarter cask more juicy, because you're getting that contrast of what's happening.
Right, I can't wait. Absolutely. So the 21 will be out in next year.
Yeah, you can't have much of that 21. This 21 left. You must be near the end of that, are you?
Yeah, there's not much around. If you see in a bottle shop, buy it, because you won't see it again. Right, here we go.
So the quarters are phenomenal. The quarters, they don't go on to the general domestic market anymore. They did for a short period when we first worked with them. But when we started, we never did any travel retail before, went into the airports, the duty free. But when we started offering to the duty free guys, they wanted something different. They wanted something, outside the kind of norm of the distillery's character, or not character, but style and domestic. And they wanted something of a volume that they could sustain. So what we did was look at our warehouses and decided that any quarter cask, because we didn't do a lot of them, there was no point in trying to make the quarter cask go around the whole world. Let's just put them into duty free. So what you'll find now is that the quarter casks are only duty free exclusives.
I see Whiskey is My Jam has got a bottle of that BenRiach from the 90s. I'm looking at the screen right now.
There you go. I see that. Perfect.
Wow.
That's the question.
Yeah. Whiskey is My Jam. Is that bottle open or not? Fair play to you, fella. Fair play to you.
Nah, not open.
Keep it for later. Keep it for when I come over. We'll share a dram when I come over next.
He's just got a few cheeky little different BenRiachs on his back as well.
I'll bring you a sample over the next time. Actually, that makes sense.
No. Witnesses. Amazing. Awesome. I've only got. I couldn't find my open bottle, so I've got an open bottle, so I won't taste this one. I'll just be led by you.
I jumped into my loft actually last night to pull these up, and it's dangerous going up to my loft, so I don't know what I'm over. So as far as whiskey, it can sometimes get lost in the loft, but I did love playing around with these. So this is going back to when I was in production, when we first started using quarters. Again, just bringing in something different from the norm. And we did know that the quarter cask would work, because again, because of the sweetness of the spirit, the problem with quarter cask sometimes, if you haven't got a spirit that's sweet enough or fruity enough, it can quite quickly get overtaken by the wood due to the kind of smaller, smaller cask and the wood ratio. But we knew just over time and experience of how BenRiach reacts in cask, that we knew they would work well with quarters. So we probably started filling these, oh goodness, what was it now? Probably about 2011 or something like that. But they were exciting to watch progress, because I would almost because I'd never worked with quarter cask before, I was really excited to kind of see that development of, even like 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, almost every month looking at these quarter casks, and they just blew me away. But you got to watch them like that, because they can quite easily overtake overnight. So you got to kind of watch them. Is that one hit the money? Yep, okay. Is that one can go a bit further? Okay. You really have to play around with them individually, rather than just saying, give me 20 of these and bring them together. Each one has almost got its own development and character individually. So you have to taste them a lot. That's my excuse anyway. So what is a quarter cask? I've seen some things online that people say a quarter cask is a quarter of an American standard barrel, but it's not. It's actually a quarter of a butt. So if a butt in general is, between 400 or 500 litres, a quarter of that, a quarter cask is normally between maybe 90 and 120 litres, depending on who's made them and the cooperies they came from. Generally, the ones we fill are just between 90 and 100 litres. Beautiful, almost kind of more cylindrical, just due to their reduced staves. And I think off the top of my head, say for example, a barrel has got like between 31 and 35 staves in its makeup. A quarter cask about 26. So a stave can vary from 1 inch to 4 inches. So, but I would say on average you're looking at about 23, 26 staves on a quarter cask. Again, reducing that diameter, and again giving us different wood contact.
So sure, and this question we actually I don't know this. Would you take the quarter cask and then back them at the end and then pour that?
Yeah.
Or would you go cask by cask?
Yeah, but you've got to look like this one, that one, this one, this one, and this one, because they're so individual. Again, the spirit development is so unique to each cask. You can't just batch it like give me 10 or 20 of these and done. You've got to pick each one for its own personality. But I'm sure what you get here. What did I say earlier about BenRiach? Playful, bright, crisp, vibrant. That's what I like about this whiskey. It captures that vibrancy, the playful nature of BenRiach, and delivers still all that maltiness, almost like dusting of icing sugar in there for the sweetness. You could call it that biscuity maltiness is still there, or kind of a sweeter maltiness is there. And the good thing about the quarter cask, they're not like first fill staves. So the staves have been used maybe 3 or 4 times before. So you're reducing the vanillin element and letting the distillery character be the star of the show. So yes, obviously the wood's important, but if you were to use first fill bourbon barrels, which you wouldn't anyway, in a quarter cask, all you would be tasting is bourbon. The vanillins the oak impact would be too much. So you want some staves that have been used many times, decreasing that level of oak influence and really highlighting the distillery's character.
Are we still using the quarter cask much at the moment at the distillery?
Yeah, don't fill many of them. I think even back then we filled about 90 a year. So it wasn't a huge volume each year. I've forgotten how good this is actually. See, for that freshness and brightness, and even thinking about comparing this one to the 10, this is going back to maybe more that green apple vibrancy again. So the apple's not quite ripened, but it's still beautiful and fresh. It's a nice one to describe even the elevation of a whiskey through its maturation. Capturing at this stage is beautifully, I think, capturing everything you want in that more the greener, fresher apple side.
And Grace is killing it with his tasting notes. Loving it, mate. Fantastic.
Powdered. That's a good one. I like even that wee difference of powdered chocolate, which is quite unique on the tongue. And you do get oakiness. You're going to get a different oak here as well. I keep on talking about the oak through each one as well, but it is important that you can capture that what the oak is bringing, which is again a nice a nice dusting of icing sugar. Again, you can see that charred oak keynote. Beautiful.
Because I always forget, I've just put our Instagram handles into the chat because I always forget to do this. I'm terrible at it. So, Single Malt Stewart, he's Stewart Buchanan, Geeky Spirit guy, obviously, is me. I love the vanilla custard note. That's a fantastic note band goes there. Cracker note. Absolute cracker.
I love that.
What's that over there? I think if I can't have the bottle, I'll crack that tonight.
If you go to the warehouse, Linus, you can tell the quarter cask, not only in cask size, but they're the only casks in the Dunwich warehouse that we stack 4 high. So generally across the Dunwich warehouse, 13, 2 high for butts, 3 high for barrels and hogsheads. But you might see a slightly higher stow of cask, which is about maybe an inch or a foot higher, and that's a quarter cask. So we can get 4 high on these stows. And the guys love actually stowing them because it's almost a bit of a competition who could get the cask the straightest as set them. That's good back to a warehouse thing.
So no Jenga stacks.
Yeah, no, you got to get. It's almost like the guys take great pride in getting it just bang on.
If ever you can again, we can go to Scotland and you're near Elgin. Check out Benryak. It's an absolutely fantastic distillery. I'm back there next year, so I'm coming up for sure. I want to check out that new visitor centre, but Warehouse 13 is just honestly a special place. It really is. It's unbelievable.
It is.
The breadth of barrels you have there is just off the chain. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, I've never seen it. Well, the thing is as well, you look at what's happened in the whiskey world since 2005-6. So much more diversity coming into warehouses. You know, there's more styles being made, which maybe aren't historic styles across distilleries. So whether it's Balvenie doing the wheat of peat, you know, Murray started peating about 2007. Other distilleries that weren't commonly peated whiskies have now another layer of production doing that. But BenRiach's been doing it for 50 years. So again, not that I always say we didn't. It's not as if we did. It's not jumping on we did this first thing. It's just the fact that we did. Yeah, we did do it first. So I'm always quite happy with that. But that gives us, again, that history and heritage that can't be touched in our warehouses.
All right, moving on to the quarter cask peated.
Right, there we go. Do you know what? I think the evolution of what's happened is natural. So it's quite hard to tell what's, you know, Billy laid down these casks, Rachel brings them together, but with the evolution of where we were going, would Billy have gone that way anyway? Maybe, and clean up the range, you know, as the distillery evolved. So it's hard to tell, but every blender will put their own influence on it, on each whiskey. They want their own personal influence, and I do think what Rachel looks for is the fruit. I've never seen MB play and take that fruit note so precisely and elevate it. And she's actually done that with Glendronach as well. She's actually brought more fruit tones into Glendronach than has ever been there. So I would definitely say she loves exposing that fruit character.
I think from my point of view, she seems to have locked some more subtle flavours than I had before.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's not even about creating something different. It's just it's about unlocking it. Sometimes it's about adding one thing against another, which you don't think you're going to get, but then you get this natural elevation of something else. And that's about playing around. That's about, you know, sitting in your tasting room, just playing around with these casks. I should have actually told you I was tasting this peated quarter cask, but I couldn't help myself. I had to go. I'm in heaven tasting this, and this does remind me of tasting these in the warehouse as we're progressing, capturing that moment where, again, mostly you always talk about sweet spots with whiskey, you know, when everything just comes together at that right time. But I don't think more so than this one, because there's a lot of stuff to look at, you know, wood, cask, peat, oak, character. There's so many tangents to start bringing together. But I think we've hit these quarter cask peated right on the crosshairs where everything just is perfect. I just love this.
So Stu, will the size of the cask affect the flavour or the intensity of the smoke?
Yeah, and that's why sometimes you have to go the small. If you go small, In a cask, you generally have to go a bit younger, hence why there's no age on this, because it will give Rachel the flexibility, or Billy before her, the flexibility to use a variety of ages. But the only way we can make our peat higher is by going to a bigger cask, or a more neutral cask. With small casks, you will lose that phenol very quickly. Again, more evaporation, you'll actually lose a lot of that through evaporation. More wood absorption, a lot of that phenol will get locked in the wood. So you can decrease that, what would be a phenolic number, quite rapidly in a cask, the smaller it is.
Barbecue rub smoke from Mark. Listen, absolute killer taste in it, guys. Love it.
There's something else in here which is, I can't even describe what it is, because it's not the typical. If you even look at the fruit character of the rum barrel or whatever, yeah, it's a very nice fruit, but the small cask is bringing almost a, I can't even describe it, to be honest. It's just this other, 1 minute I think it's herbal, next minute I think it's floral, and it dances between fruity, herbal and floral, but every time I make mine, it changes again. There's so many little things.
It's amazing how diverse the spirit is in different barrels. Genuinely blows me away.
Yeah.
Look at everyone's deep in thought on the screen moment. Just really thinking it through.
And I think quarter casks are really, yeah. As much as I do love the classic, I think how that peat reacts in a quarter cask is very different, which I love. And that's why I love tasting these, watching that development every month. So this is the old pack. We are just going through a repack of the quarters for travel retail. So this will move into the new package. So if and when we start getting on an airplane again, if you can walk through the warehouse, you'll still see the quarters in travel retail, but in the new package.
Love the apple crumble nuts, apple crumble, sweet smoke, honey, apple crumble, powdered sugar, charred oak raisins. Nice one, guys.
Well, it's St Andrew's Day coming up soon, and I'm going to make an old traditional Scottish beer called Cranachan, which is normally made with raspberries, cream, and oats, but I'm going to actually use apple. And I'm tempted to just put a little bit of I'll use the original 10 through the cream, which I think will be a touch. So I'll send you a picture of that, Linus, when I've just on.
Nah, amazing. So what's everyone's favourite so far, or what one has like now? Resonated with you guys? Was it the obviously the new 10s or the 12 or the old 21 or the quarter cask or the quarter cask peated? What's everyone's thought so far? 12-year-old. I like it. I love the evolution of the 12. We do have a little cheeky one at the very end, which is a signatory 20-year-old cask. I might make Craig do a little bit of work here. I maybe have a quick chat about the signatory Benryak. Obviously, it's an independent bottling. Stuart, would you do anything? Actually, is Craig online?
Yeah, well, again, I pulled an example from my loft of not this example, something of a similar vein. It was a 1999, and I pulled down. But just to talk about that, we don't often we never put BenRiach into independent bottlers back in the day, unless it was one of Billy's friends, and Andrew Simonton and Billy are just good buddies. Same as like Alex and Adelphi, we gave him a couple, and so you don't often see BenRiach in independent bottlers at this age. But again, it goes back to the industry itself. It's your friends that you deal with. It's not in some cases big business, which a lot of people think. So that's why Andrew did get some cash from us. Also, just a wee geeky point, if you want to think, just a wee trivia. When Andrew at Edward Dower, has also Edward Dower Distillery, so when their production was kind of over spilling their warehouses, we actually warehoused some of their stock at BenRiach. and I remember looking after it there. And when while he was building his new warehouse, he came up and he took the measurements of our warehouse 13 and actually reconstructed these measurements in his new.
Oh, really?
So that, I remember the guys coming up doing all things. So yeah, that was quite a cool wee touch. But it's a beautiful distillery down there as well, if you were passing the Central Belt or up at the start of the Highlands. But yeah, and Andrew, the whole team there are fantastic, and they do put out awesome whiskey, as well as a great guy. But I think this is if it's the same one. I think this did start off as a refill sherry cask. So that's back, even as I mentioned, going back to us walking in that warehouse in 2004, a lot of refill sherry, beautiful, again, not overtaken by the sherry itself, but he's subtly keeping with Silly's character, and then moving into the sherry for the last, I believe, 8 months with this 20-year-old. But there lies the question as well, what sherry? It doesn't say, it just says sherry, but you taste this, just use your imagination, what sherry do you think it's moved into? I think just looking at tasting notes, what I found online, it's quite evident which I think it is, but you think kind of decide about that.
I think the notes.
And remembering a short 8 months finish, you know, the time of that. This is a similar one.
Yeah.
1999.
It's quite impressive that you remember all this stuff about these barrels and people visiting the distillery and stuff like that. It's quite good. It's amazing.
Well, there's some people who don't remember visiting me at the distillery because we have 13. They don't remember leaving. But
Exactly.
Remember arriving. That's young. Yeah, that is a Oloroso. Sure.
But I think as well, about BenRiach, you know, just, and that's why I love having Glendronach as well, because even in sherry, they produce two different things. BenRiach still, even though it's a sweeter, in some ways lighter spirit, you know, it still does hold on to itself. It's got a huge, one thing I like about BenRiach is its versatility in the new make spirit. You know, it can go into anything but still remain BenRiach. And you can't see that for a lot of distillery spirits. It can sometimes be lost over time, but BenRiach can really hold on to itself.
Young. What's everyone's thoughts on the last one? Signatory. That's young. Very young. Actually, a great way to finish the tasting, actually.
And you know they were good casks. Straight to that one. Was it 59 point something?
Yeah. ABV. Yeah, it drinks way below, say, 59.4. That drinks way below ABV.
So you know these casks have been tight. You know you've not had, you know, sometimes you walk through a warehouse, you can start seeing expansion on the end of the cask end, and see that lines of leakage. But I can actually walk through a distillery now, you look at a cask end, if it's clean after 20 years, you know you're going to get a high strength in there, because it's not had that expansion giving you a higher ABV loss or angel share. So even visually, you can start pulling casks and knowing what's going to be in there. So to get something at this strength at this age is fantastic. So you know the good cask that has been held in.
It's amazing like you said, the spirit really shines through on it, but it's amazing that difference that heavier sherry cask does to that spirit in comparison to what we've been drinking. You know, like there's a lot of sort of Rachel's put a lot of thought and effort together in building a whiskey up, etc. Whereas you find this one here is just like the spirit and in one cask. You can really get that one dimension where the other core range, there's a bit of a speciality to it. You get lots of these little things in it and you keep going back to it, whereas this one, it's just big and bold and you know, it's funny. Yeah.
No, you're right. And that's what and sometimes some people ask us why we sell more whiskey to independent bottlers. We don't have to, because we do our batches each year ourselves, which you can then have, you know, your individual cask, which has always been something we've done in the warehouse. We can show you how we combine them, but you also every year can buy that individual kind of single cask offering as well. So that's always, I always look forward to that. That was the time of the year when we did that batch, because back in the day it was my job to choose them and do the tasting notes for them. So that was a good wee project as well. But when we do the batches, what you want to do is say, well, let's have an overview of the warehouse. Let's actually use this batch to actually kind of show off what we have, whether it's through age or through cask. Just yeah, these batches are beautiful.
So here's got a cola cube soaked in tequila. It's a cracker. Yes. I love that one. This is beautiful. This is definitely intense. It's really amplified that Oloroso.
Yeah.
Dry, but not
and for
really
me,
dry.
it's that plummy note. That's Andreas there. Yeah, the plummy or even pruny notes when you get that at that age. I don't know, but I think I heard you saying Oloroso, Linus, but again, I'm not going to disagree with you because I don't know. But looking at that kind of notes and the fact that it's 6 or 8 month finish, I'm leaning on the side of PX, to be honest. Yeah, but you're not, you can't, but remember, the first cask for 20 years would have been Oloroso.
Gotcha.
So if you're building that refill Oloroso cask for 20 years there, and you've got all the Oloroso nuttiness, spice, oak, all the Oloroso delivery in your 20 years, I think most of this depth in the richer, darker fruit are coming from that secondary maturation into the PX. That's just my opinion right now.
Amazing.
I was told Oloroso, but not for the finish. Like I don't know where they meant Oloroso, so it could be that what you're saying there is quite true.
Yeah, it would have definitely been Oloroso at the start because we didn't have any PX refills. We never do PX refills, it's always Oloroso refills. And the fact that delivering something of that rich colour would lead me more to PX finish because you wouldn't generally get Oloroso that dark over a 8 month, 6 month period. It would get a bit longer to reach that depth. But again, who knows? I don't know. That's all. That's a great thing about whiskey.
Absolutely. Yum, though. It's super tasty. Then you going on, super intense. Yeah, that's also like clove, black pepper, and just 100%. 100%.
Can I ask Stuart, what have they done anything to the distillery over the past few years? Has it changed in any way, or is it just business as usual other than warehousing? Is it?
Yeah, nothing at all. I'm trying to think if there has been any production change. Nothing. No. There's not even any new machinery. Actually, I don't think we've even changed. I think everything's much as I left it. And I think that's a great thing about BenRiach. There's not much you need to change, or even scale wise, it sits perfectly. It could make 2.8 if you pushed it, but we don't. We sit about half of that. It does everything slowly. The machinery is basically, it was last updated in 1984-85, but it's still great machinery, and it's just does its job. It's one of the most simplified, just basic distilleries you'll find. It really is, and you can see by the picture behind you. It's about putting stuff in one thing and taking it out the other end. That's all we want to do. It's a great distillery to work.
That's the thing. Like, everybody that goes to Speyside, they're always talking about going to all the bigger distilleries, all the more well-known distilleries that have been in Australia for years, and you think, but this is a distillery where, when I visited it, it's like you said, it's just like an old style distillery. It's got everything that's there that you need to make whiskies in that facility, and it just it's a great place to visit. It's brilliant.
It's amazing. When I was there, I asked the exact same question. He said, "Oh yeah, one thing, better Wi-Fi." I went, "Okay, you've got better Wi-Fi. Okay, cool." Yeah, you're right. It's a real throat distillery. We have updated the visitor centre, so it's a bit nice to sit there and have a dram. I think when I was there, I got a bottle of whiskey. I had to get through some boxes and stuff to get to, but I've seen some pictures. It's nice for pleasure to sit there and try the whiskey.
It's always been known as a distillery that you had to work in if you wanted to really kind of progress, or see how flavors can drive or do things differently. Because when it was owned by Chivas Regal, they actually used it that every distiller who was wanting to go through their kind of apprenticeship and move into the kind of master distiller, they had to spend time at BenRiach. It was actually part of that whole progression of your career. And there were many distillers, I'm not going to mention names, I might, but I won't. But you will be familiar with who started off their careers at BenRiach, because it was one of these places, and a lot of them still do talk about it fondly. If anybody remembers or was at the last Dram Fest there, when I was sitting beside Alan Winchester from Glenlivet, for example, still talks fondly about his time through there. Same could be said for Robert Fleming up at Tom and Tool. The list is endless, but I love it when I see, good old school distillers who served their time through BenRiach. I like that.
Now, are there any questions from anyone? Anyone have any thoughts, ideas, questions for Stewart Buchanan before we have to run away and actually start his day? Thanks, mate. Really appreciate it again, getting so early into this. Yeah.
I have to ask what you're having for breakfast.
Don't know actually. I have to think about that. I have to think about that. Maybe Glendronach. No.
A question from Andreas here. Has Stewart tried the BenRiach 2013 vintage single malt Scotch whisky Wilson and Morgan?
I haven't done. I'm familiar with having some, but I've not actually tried it. I don't even know what cask style it is, to be honest. There was some cask back, some reciprocal whiskey we made. So just to touch on, like I said, we don't do stuff for independent bottlers. What BenRiach has always done, and most distilleries do, is reciprocal spirit deals, where we sell new make or swap new make with different companies. And some of that reciprocal spirit that we swapped as new make spirit and ended up in a third party has now creeped into independent. So I know the spirit, but I don't know what cask that would have been through, because it didn't come from us particularly. It came from a third party.
Any more questions, guys, or thoughts? Or before we have to run away?
What's your personal favourite of the BenRiachs?
Do you know what? It's hard to tell, to be honest, Andreas, because every time I think I've nailed it and I've got it, it changes. I think I've always got a soft spot for the 10-year-old, the Smoky 10, because historically Curiositas was always my go-to. But yeah, I can't really choose. Bang for buck, you can't beat that original 10, to be honest, and I'm drinking more of the original 10 now, just as a daily dram. I can't beat that. But then look forward to the Smoky 12 coming. You'll be really surprised by what that delivers. But I can't choose. We've also got other things like smoke season, malt season, which I'll to use soon further down the line. So it's really an exciting time for BenRiach, and I can't make my mind up.
I pick my favourite child.
Fair enough. It's hard enough picking my favourite from tonight, so I don't blame you.
Yeah, I know.
Any more questions, guys?
Just one thing. Do you think there'll be a cask strength BenRiach come out in the standard range, or core range?
Well, it's funny that, Mark, because it's something that we did debate, and the previous cask strengths were extremely successful. I think it was wise when we launched this last September, or a year past September, almost to kind of go gradually rather than just overwhelming with a huge range. So I liked how we originally put out the 4 core range, got that into the market. We have now just released what we call smoke season, which is a high, just slightly lower than cask strength ABV peated expression. Also malting season, which is also slightly higher. But we don't have what you would think, what we would normally think of as a cask strength example yet. But what Rachel's still doing is assessing that, looking at casks. There are still more things to come, so the range will get added to. And if you look at what we're kind of calling the seasons range, which is the smoke season when we make the peated whiskey, malt season when we make the peated malt, you might find, like, say for example, the spring barley harvest. You could have a harvest season, which would be a high strength, barley focus. That's purely just off the top of my head, but
it's becoming so hard to follow all these different groups. I mean, you can go to Springbank now, got all their local barley and all their sort of like breakdowns. But
yeah, I think we were so crazy before. I think it's nice just actually stripping it back and just having almost letting people find out what the brand is, rather than this crazy eclectic different expression.
It's trying to follow Glenallachie. I mean, I love Glenallachie whiskies, but it's like to get every whiskey, it's like 40 bottles a year. It's like a crazy level of sort of output. So
No, especially trying to collect things like that, and you do miss out and stuff. But yeah, Billy's doing a great job. I love it. Love Glenallachie. So.
I've got a question here about just when we're getting the next single cask around in Australia. I'll let Craig know and he'll let you know, just because with COVID these days, I've learned the hard way. It's going to arrive this, and I'm might be an utter liar. So as soon as we get sure, I'll let Craig know.
And the only thing that's happened, I suppose, with Rachel is her actually accessing the warehouses, which has been tough for her because of limited warehouse staff, almost working with half the warehouse crew. Sampling does take a long time. So Rachel's sampling program has definitely been set back a lot under the last 18 months. Hence why we're struggling with Glenglassaugh, because she's just not able to get into the warehouse and get stuff together. So that she's struggling a little bit getting that sample program out. It is delayed, but we'll get there in the end.
I think we might just call it a day, but thank you guys for your support. Truly appreciate it. We've got great to see some fans of BenRiach. Thank you to Craig and everyone for putting it on. Truly appreciate it. Obviously, thank you to Mr. Buchanan for being the crack of dawn and doing this with us and sharing his knowledge. Like I say, I always learn something new every single session. Mate. You truly are one of the best going around, mate. Thank you so much. And thanks, guys. And I hope to see you actually at an in-person tasting. Imagine that some stage in the near future. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
No worries at all.
Thank you, Craig, as well.
Thanks very much, Stuart. Was it, guys? You're welcome to hang around. Stuart's going to leave us, and maybe Linus as well. But you are welcome to hang around. And thanks again, all the way from the UK, getting up so early, having breakfast with us. And yeah, good on you. It'll be good to see you back in Australia, or I'll be over in June. It'll be good to catch up for drink.
Oh well, definitely. Let us know. And I'm going to figure out how I can change my name in this bloody thing.
I think you should keep it like that.
Man of mystery. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Okay, guys. Thanks again.
Great to see you all. Really appreciate it.
Sandra.
Come